We are most privileged this morning to have E.J. Niles with us, and she will be giving the lesson. She is on the faculty at Unity Institute. She is one of the pioneer minds within the Unity movement that explores new ventures in spirituality, and it is my great privilege to present to you E.J. Niles.
Thank you. What a scene. To be up here and look at all of these faces, and the faces behind me too. It's a wonderful place, isn't it? You know, I believe we're living in a miraculous time. In fact, Christopher Fry has said, thank God our time is now. But you know, occasionally, I come across someone who say, well, I don't see why you think now is so special. It doesn't look to me like we've come very far. Look at what's still going on in the world. How could these people say it's a miraculous time when we still have the war in Syria, when we still have all the unrest in the Mideast, when we still have the political situation we have in our country right now? How could anyone say this is a miraculous time? Well, what I've learned is there are a number of people, a growing number of people, including archaeologists and anthropologists and psychologists and yes, even theologians, that believe that we have been, as humankind, on a very long but very productive spiritual journey. And it's a process of evolution. Now, I became a fan of a Jesuit scholar and wonderful man named Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, and some of you may know of his work. But one of the things he really brought out in me is the idea of the importance of understanding that we are evolving, we're in a process of evolution, and that, as some have said, God isn't finished with us yet, no matter what name you may call God. So how can we be able to sort of access the information that makes this more than just a very interesting, very exciting idea? Well, what we have learned, and the interesting part about this, is that the first time in human history, we have been able to go back and see not only from where we have come, but how far we have come. And when we're able to take a long view and stand back and look over time, and yes, it is a long time because we've been around a long time. Even before we became self-reflective individuals, we had been here. But what we are able to see is this process of evolution has taken us through various levels or stages. And that each one of these stages that we go through is bringing us a little more aware of what God or energy that we call God is about, or what we as humankind are about. And what we're able to see is that every one of these times when we had a long period of time where we lived in a particular kind of consciousness or what we call worldview, that we had a way of looking at what the divine was, and we had a way of looking at who we were, and that what we can see when we go back over history is there have been periods of time where we can see that changed. When we see something happened that caused a huge change in the way the majority of people looked at the world. And we can see that every time there was a huge change, there was a period of unrest and chaos. And so what I think we're looking at right now, we're looking at a world that's experiencing a whole lot of unrest and chaos. But what biology and evolution tells us is that anytime an organism starts to be stressed, that within the DNA of this whole organism is this idea that something has to change and that the whole organism itself can rearrange itself. So I'm going to invite us to look at humankind as a whole group of people who have a number of times over our life experienced huge periods of stress and unrest, and in each case, our collective DNA, if you will, caused us to change the way we looked at the world. And we have watched that, and we have seen that, yes, we can continue evolving, and we can continue being aware that we're evolving. But one of the things that also happened at a particular stage in our evolution, by the way, is that we became self-reflective. We started not only knowing, but we started knowing that we knew. Now, what we call the Garden of Eden story in the Bible, of course, is when the people were thrown out of the garden, Ken Wilber says they were not thrown out, they grew up and walked out. Because what happened is there was a period in our evolution where we became self-reflective and we started asking the questions in the world. And by asking those questions, we eventually became aware that yes, there was another way to work at the world. And so we've been doing this, and we've been doing it for millennia, if you will. But the interesting thing about it, too, is that as humankind, as a collective, we've been going through these different stages or levels of evolution. Individually, we do the same thing. Individually, we physically progress through an evolutionary process. Emotionally and mentally, we do that too. And so what happens is we begin to have periods of unrest in our life. Have you ever had the thing happen to you that you didn't know exactly why you were unhappy, you didn't know exactly why you were, feeling like there was chaos in your world, and what we didn't recognize at the time was what I call divine discontent. I believe there's a spirit in the universe that's been driving evolution, that's still doing it in the universe, but is also doing it within each one of us. So there are times in our life when we think, oh my goodness, nothing is going right. I like to use the example of a jigsaw puzzle. You can have all the pieces out there in front of you and you start building your picture, and all at once you pick up a piece and you say, that piece doesn't belong in this puzzle. You ever had the instance where you're building something that you didn't think belonged in your life? Or occasionally, you may look at it and said, they left some of the pieces out at the factory. Had that happen to you? What's so important for us to see is that when we start getting this divine discontent or this sort of feeling of something's not quite right, it's kind of time for us to pay attention that Spirit is trying to do something else in us individually. And here's the other exciting thing. What we do individually affects what's going to happen in humankind collectively. So we say, well, is my life of much value? We heard Duke last week talk about the importance of learning that we are valuable, learning that there's a purpose in our life. And so what I believe, and I've come to understand in my life and the other people that I've had opportunities to deal with in my life as minister and teacher or whatever, is that we are, each one of us, experiencing a possibility of being a contributor to the new evolution of everything that's happening in the world. Because you see, one of the reasons I believe we're living in miraculous times and believing that, thank God our time is now, is because we are looking at the unrest. But the other part of that quote from Christopher Fry says, thank God our time is now when wrong comes up to meet us. So what is the wrong that comes up to meet us? It comes up the chaos that is telling us that we're ready to move to another level. We're ready to move to another level of understanding of who we are, understanding of what we think God is in the world, and we're moving to a new level where we understand how we are to be in relationship with each other, another thing that Duke talked about last week that is so important in this whole process. Because sometimes when we're individually in this place where we're feeling the unrest or the divine discontent, it's very important that we have someone of like mind that will hold that space for us. I came across a quote that I like and I use quite often. It says, a good friend is one who knows the song in your heart and can sing it for you when your memory fails. And our memories fail sometimes, don't they? Sometimes we forget. Sometimes we forget that we may not be of the value we think that we know we are at some deep level. But you know what? In each one of us is this DNA that is waiting for us to be the participators who are going to be unfolded. And so how do we do that? How do we see our individual place in this whole big scheme of things? Well, first of all, one of the things that's important for us to remember is to take a long view, be able to look far back into our history so that we really can see how far we've come. Now, I have the joy and the privilege to have lived a number of years, and I don't have to look back too far to see how far we've come. I lived at a time where it was absolutely not only acceptable, it was encouraged to have prejudice and discrimination of people of another race. I certainly lived at a time when it was absolutely acceptable for women to have their place, you know. And I became an uppity woman. What can you say? Thank you. But the thing I like to call to people's attention is this. I was young enough in World War II to be able to hear Franklin Roosevelt on the radio say, "We are at war." But do you know what? The majority of the people in the world did not know what was going on in Nazi Germany. But nothing can happen in the world today without us knowing it. We have Facebook and we have Twitter and we have telephones and I have to admit, I love the fact that we have computers, but I'm still a little not on Facebook and not on Twitter, and you know, so. But I have faith that one of these days maybe I can be. But here's the idea. We are now able to look back and see not only where we've been as humanity, we now have the tools to look back at our own life and see how we have gone through these stages where we are becoming more with every action we take, with every word we speak. And so what's the key? What is it we can do? First of all, as I mentioned, hold the idea that we are going somewhere, that there's an forward movement of evolution going on in the lives of the world and in our own lives. Find friends of like mind. Cultivate the relationships that will help you bring your positive energy out, as we have talked about in our class this morning. Recognize that together, if we have a committed group of people, we can make a huge change in the world. You see it every one of the junctures where we had another new stage come around. There were a few committed people. You know, it's been said that the Renaissance came about because of the beliefs and actions of less than 1,000 people. And you probably have all heard the Margaret Mead quote that says, "Never doubt that a committed group of people can change the world. In fact, it's the only way it's ever done." So you see, it's very important that we realize that we're here valuable, that we have a purpose here alive. And if we can begin to get the glimmer of the thought that our purpose in life is not only to accelerate our own spiritual evolution, but to sing the songs of those around us when our memories fail, so that we can be the people, part of that very small number of people, then can make a change in the world. The hawk one said to the dove, "How much does a snowflake weigh?" And the dove said, "Well, nothing. I mean, almost less than nothing." And the hawk said, "Let me tell you a story." He said, "The other day I was sitting under a tree on a limb, and it began to snow. And not having anything better to do, I started counting the snowflakes." He said, "I had gotten up to 7,341,952. And he said, and then when the 953rd snowflake fell, the branch broke. So that nothing that was less than nothing made a huge change in the world. What if each one of us were able and willing to say, I won't be that 953rd snowflake. And the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to make sure that my thoughts and my words and my actions are reinforcing the idea that yes, we live at a miraculous time. Yes, we can thank God our time is now because something is happening in the world. Do you have the feeling there's something up in the universe, that we're ready for this next big move up? That's a great feeling, but what a greater feeling it might be to say, I have some part in making that happen. You know, Richard Lynch, one of our early Unity ministers, said, we have become contributors to our own evolution. And I think that's what the people now who are able to say we are living in a miraculous time, I think that's what they're saying. We're living in a miraculous time because we have a part in it. But we also have to always keep in mind that we're still in process. We still have a way to go. In fact, some people believe that we're on a never-ending quest. Teilhard de Chardin said, the world is always ahead of us and always changing, and so we're in a never-ending conquest of the universe and ourselves. That's an exciting fear for me. I knew when I grew up in a more traditional type of Christianity, if you will, that I got to the place where I thought, do I really want to go to heaven and walk around on gold streets and play on a harp? Began not making any sense to me. See, you may have had that kind of experience. You may have had the experience where somewhere in you, and I would venture that because you were in this congregation, in this audience today, you've had the experience where you said, what worked for me before isn't working for me anymore. And that's what I call that divine urge, that divine discontent. That divine urge that actually within our spiritual DNA is right there, urging us on, calling us, inviting us to absolutely claim our purpose as being contributors to our evolution. So that's what I would like to challenge you with today, is to think about, when can I give the next smile to a person who looks sad? Can I give the good word to the person who needs to be encouraged? Daniel Nahmod has a song where he said, is the world a little bit brighter? You know, are we a little bit kinder? If so, then I'm glad I came. No matter how small we think we may be, no matter how little we may have believed about ourselves, about what our purpose is, I'm here to tell you, we're here, each one of us, as a part of an absolutely grand evolutionary scheme that is taking humankind collectively and individually on this great journey. The daily word for today, I happened to notice, said we're all on a journey. Some of them we have small side trips, and some of them we have longer trips. But have you ever had the experience of having a dream where you're climbing up a mountain? If so, have you noticed in that dream that we don't make a straight path up? What we do is we make a circle, but a circle that comes around a little higher every time. And that in spiral dynamics is what we call the cycle, the ongoing cycle of our evolution. And it's interesting that every time we come to a certain place, we're able to look back and say, oh, I think I've been here before. But have you noticed when you get there the next time, you're a little bit higher? You're looking at the world a little bit different? That's what I'm talking about. And I'm talking about us recognizing our place in this great evolution that's bringing about a better world, and holding on to that vision and being a part of that group of people that says, we can make it happen. One good word at a time, one encouragement at a time, one hug at a time, one recognition at a time of the good and the beauty in those around us. So what I would invite you to think about, try to be that 25th snowflake. And I'm going to try to think about that. And together, we're going to make a difference in the world. Thank you. Presence of the Lord in this place. And I invite you to know that that presence resides within you at a very deep level. I invite you to know that we have been going through a long process, and we were there even as Star Stuff. And that DNA, spiritual DNA in each one of us is inviting us, calling us to know that we are more. To know that it's possible for us to experience more joy, more love, more knowing that we are here by divine appointment and divine purpose. And that our thoughts and our words and our actions impact the people we speak to and interact with. But they also help seeding that consciousness of a new world of you where we individually and collectively know that we are kinder, more loving, that we experience more joy. We are so grateful to be living in this time. PD knowing that beyond what appear to be chaos and unrest is a new level of order that is emerging. And each one of us can know that any experience of chaos or unrest we are experiencing is a sign that a new level of order is emerging within us. For we are here to know our divinity, to know how to be while we are experiencing our journey, to know that in any circumstance of our life, when we need comfort, there is comfort. When we need wisdom, there is wisdom. When we need to know that someone else is singing the song in our heart for us, we're able to sing the harmony. I invite you to take a few minutes just to access that place of deep knowing, for it is there. In a time of quiet, access the deep knowing that we are here, valuable for a purpose. Thank God our time is now. Thank God we are living in a miraculous world. Thank God for a journey that we know is headed in an upward, forward, progressive movement of spirit. And thank God that we know we are in process. Our time is now as a world, and my time and your time is now. As we reach out to each other and the world.